Thanks for joining us today for bringing human-centered design to life, defining problems with people. Just one quick note that I wanted to share with y'all before we even dove into the agenda. I was at a conference last year, and they talked about how those that are most impacted by government systems are often left out of the effort to reimagine them. And so that's really kind of the basis of the conversation today, so that we make sure that we're designing with folks and not for folks. You can move on to the next slide. So today, the agenda is really some introductions. I'll introduce myself, have y'all get to know me a little bit better, go over some learning goals so that we're all on the same page about what the expectations are for today. I'll go over some process and some methods for human-centered design and specifically design thinking, with a focus on really that piece where we're interacting with users and how we can best position ourselves to get the most out of that particular piece of the process. We'll go into a breakout session, and then I'll share some tips for success, and then we'll have time, hopefully, for a Q&A. Next slide. So my name is Emilia Ndely-Ogundipe. I'm a product lead and innovation strategist. I have a strong passion for uncovering unmet user needs and creatively delivering equitable solutions that delight users. A little bit about me. I am currently in transition. Shout out to everybody from New Jersey. I just left my position with the Office of Innovation. I was there for 2.5 years, working as a product lead there and an innovation fellow. I'll be starting on Monday as a White House Presidential Innovation Fellow in DC, working with the Department of Labor. But I did not come from a world of government. I honestly didn't even come from a world of innovation. I was a healthcare consultant. I have a master's in healthcare administration as well as an MBA. And I wanted to share that bit of background with you all so that you guys feel empowered to use these techniques despite whatever background you come from, whatever sector you work in, to help you creatively solve problems. I don't have a degree in design thinking, or I don't have, a master's degree in design or anything like that. But I have been able to take these methods and really help to center users as I creatively solve problems. So I just wanted to share that bit with you. The learning goals for today, I'm hoping that you learn when to apply. Thank you all for the congratulations in the chat. And hi, Beth. I hope that you all learn when to apply different methodologies and tools. I'm hoping that you learn when to actually apply those within your work specifically. I want you all to learn how to develop a research work plan. So we're going to go over that a little bit. And then also how to develop strong interview questions. We'll spend a bit of time on that, and that's also what we'll be focusing on in the breakout session. Next slide. So human-centered design is a practical, repeatable approach to solving problems in an innovative way. It's the ability to kind of unleash that creativity while centering users throughout the process. So one of the methods and approaches of human-centered design is design thinking. And I share with you all the Stanford Design School design thinking process and the way that they kind of imagine design thinking. It's really in 5 phases. So we have empathy, we have the define phase, the ideation phase, the prototype phase, and the testing phase. And I recognize that folks on the call probably have differing levels of understanding of human-centered design and design thinking. So I'm going to be going over the whole process so that we can kind of level set there and diving a little bit deeper on the empathize and define phase, as that really centers the problem definition with users. And so prior to class, I had you all watch a couple of videos on empathy and ambiguity. And I really wanted you all to kind of understand how important those two mindsets are as you walk through this process. The ability to understand the people that you're serving with an open, non-judgmental mind, and then the ability to understand that you actually don't know what the problem is at the beginning. It's very important. And even as you start to uncover what the problem is, you might go back and redefine it later on in the process. And so being able to sit with ambiguity is super important. And that's kind of why I had you guys watch those two videos prior to this class. So in the empathize phase, it's really where you get to understand users. You can do this through several things. Like I said, you want a non-judgmental mindset. You can interview users, you can kind of shadow them to understand kind of what their life is like. And that really dives into kind of the designing with and not for. The define phase is really where you take all that information that you've gathered in the empathize or discover phase, as some folks call it, and start to make sense of them through insights. And you can start to formulate some of those insights into action through personas, through understanding user pain points, user challenges, things like that. During the ideate phase, you take those insights and all that information that you've gathered, and then you start to just generate solutions. During this phase, I don't know if this is rare or not, but I know sometimes in the workplace, it can be hard to sit with this feeling, but quantity is actually more important than quality in this phase. You want to generate as many ideas as possible. And again, taking that mindset of non-judgment throughout the process, really opening yourself up to all those ideas, because ideas can spur ideas and spur additional thinking. So you really want to be open-minded throughout that. You want to develop different prototypes. So at the prototype stage, you'll start solutioning and kind of bringing those ideas to life. And then you come back and test those ideas or those prototypes with users at the end there. Like I said, I'll be focusing on the empathize and define phase. And so we can move on to the next slide. During the empathize phase, this is a time where you build context for the problem that you're investigating. You want to get to know your potential users better and understand the stakeholders that you might be partnering with, or maybe your department is looking to solve a specific problem, and so you want to understand what their main concerns are. And the work that you do during this phase really informs everything that follows. So you really want to make sure that you take your time and go deep on the research. So there are many different ways that you can engage during this empathize phase. I mentioned earlier doing interviews, which we'll get into in a bit. You can interview users, you can interview stakeholders. You want to conduct secondary, or what some folks call desk research. Those are a few of the things that you can do during this phase. I also wanted to talk about kind of the mindset that you want to have during this phase. There's an exercise that you can do called hopes and fears, which really kind of sets your team up for success, because you can kind of start to understand what each person is looking forward to during this project. What do they want to accomplish? this could be professionally or personally. They could want to impress a new client or impress their manager. You get a better understanding of kind of where your teammates are and where some potential biases and assumptions may lie. And then for the fears portion, you can start to understand what your teammates may be looking to avoid, where they, some areas that they may be kind of scared to approach, some things that make them nervous about interacting with users, or engaging in this way. This is a different way of working for a lot of us. So starting to understand kind of where those trepidations lie. You can start to understand maybe some issues they've had in the past with this particular audience, or with this particular methodology, and any cautionary tales about moving forward. And so it's an exercise where folks can kind of get that all out, and a discussion can be had amongst your team prior to even engaging with users, to be able to kind of get to know your team a bit better. One thing I wanted to discuss, and this will kind of lead into the next phase, is that one, you might have several rounds of interviews, not just with different groups such as stakeholders or different user groups, but you may have several rounds so that you can start to understand your problem a bit deeper. So I'll tell you a story about the last project that I worked on while I was at New Jersey. It was called Worker.nj. It was intended to be a portal. We originally wanted to be a landing page for all workers in New Jersey, and that's all we really knew. That's all we really understood, and we knew it was a big undertaking, but we didn't really know what to prioritize or where to start. We had ideas of kind of what this might look like, but we didn't have, and we had worked on several projects in the workforce space, but we didn't really know, we didn't have any kind of true data that was informing the reason for this particular project. And so we decided to just interview users and really understand kind of what they were going through and what their main priorities were. We engaged in desk research by reading the news, reading reports from our partners at the Department of Labor, talking to our stakeholder partners to really understand what the challenges were, and what the current needs were for this particular population. And so we went from this big, hairy, doesn't sound good, this big, hairy group. The workers in New Jersey are not hairy, but we went from this big group to distilling it down to working parents. And after we figured out that the user group we wanted to focus on was working parents, after understanding through the news and through our DOL partners that this was a priority group, we went back and did another round of interviews, because honing in on the particular user group you want to focus on doesn't necessarily point you to the problems that they're actually trying to solve. So we had to go back and do another round of user interviews to understand what that particular group was trying to solve. So I really wanted to elicit the point of taking your time during this process, and the fact that it might take several rounds. You may be engaging with not only the potential users, but also with your stakeholders, and that there are several ways to gain this research. There were reports that we dug through with our partner agencies. We did a landscape analysis to really understand kind of what other folks were doing and how they've approached solving the problem as well. Next slide, please. The next phase that I want to focus on is the define phase. And these methods help you to derive insights from the information gathered during the previous phase. So as I mentioned, you're going to gather a bunch of information, and you're going to start to see some patterns emerge here. You're going to start to be able to develop insights based on those patterns that really can start to address the needs of the folks that you're designing for. And this is also an area where you may challenge some of the original assumptions that you had, maybe some things that came out during the hopes and fears exercise, maybe some ideas that you already had about solving the problem. This could start to be validated or maybe dismissed during this phase based on the research you've collected so far. You also start to understand kind of the user flows and kind of the user journey at this point. Some of the examples of methods during this phase are understanding user pain points. So what are things that users are struggling with? Where are they getting stuck throughout the process? Another thing that kind of dovetails with user pain points is it's a different method. It's not on here, but I wanted to share. It's called jobs to be done. So really understanding what job the user is trying to accomplish and where they're getting hung up during that task. Developing user personas. So really starting to understand the different types of users that are dealing with this issue. A persona is a fictional character, which you create based on your research. So you start to kind of group folks into these personas based on your understanding of user needs, experiences, behaviors, and goals. And then after you develop those personas, you can kind of understand how they walk through the process through things like a journey map or a service blueprint, where you can understand not only the user's perspective, but also the employee's perspective and where there may be hangups in what they call the back of the house. So the front of the house is where the user is engaging and where the user touch points are. And the back of the house is really where the employees are and where there may be some processes and inefficiencies that can be addressed there as well. In this phase, you also start to generate hypotheses that are based on your insights. And so you start to, this is very similar to hypotheses that you developed in science class. You really start to generate informed hypotheses that help you stay focused when it comes to the ideation and testing phase, and focused on really the problem that you're trying to solve here. Next slide. Okay, so I had mentioned a few of these already, but I wanted to walk you all through kind of how you develop a plan for your research and engaging with users. And so the first thing I think is really important is to find and review what's already known. So like I mentioned, you can engage in desk research by doing Google searches, reading books, articles, listening to podcasts, what's already out there about this population and this particular problem. Start to get a handle on some of the research and some of the data that's out there. You want to build your team. So you want to make sure that the team that's engaging in this work is diverse. There's some different characteristics that you can consider. You can consider research versus design experience. You can consider detail-oriented teammates versus big picture thinkers, creative thinkers versus analytical thinkers, diversity in gender, age, mindset, familiarity with the topic also really helps. Having folks that are more green to the topic may bring some different perspective and ideas. And then also you want to consider folks that have cultural differences to really round out the team and the types of potential solutions that you may come up with. You want to understand the current context of use and experience. So part of the desk research may be a landscape analysis, as I previously discussed. for you to learn what's already out there. What are other states doing? What are other programs doing that are solving a similar problem? What are private sector folks doing to solve this problem? To go back to the Worker NJ project that I was working on in New Jersey, where we landed after doing our initial research and interviews and kind of synthesizing that information, was that folks really needed help with the application part of cash benefits at the state. And so we kind of honed in on how might we assist them through this process. And so we started to do some research, and we actually found that there's an insurance company out there that has a benefits calculator for some of these state and federal resources. And so we also found a tracker on Etsy, of all places. Someone was selling a tracker on how to track your benefits. And so you can really get creative with this landscape analysis and start to understand kind of how folks are solving the problem right now and how that might inform some of your solutions in the future. You want to develop a research plan and map out what the participants will go through. So we'll go through how to develop research questions in a bit. And then you also want to make sure that you have learning goals and objectives for your plan so that you can stay on task and stay on target. And that will help you not only develop some of those research questions, but be real specific when you get to the next point here, which is to screen and recruit participants. You want to make sure that those participants that you're screening for reflect the objectives that you have mapped out. So you want to create a screener that helps you narrow down your participants to an inclusive set of users. You want to make sure that it's a diverse set of folks that you're interviewing that are dealing with this problem that you're trying to solve. And you really want to make sure that you pay your participants for their time. That's super important. That's something that we practice, or that the Office of Innovation practices. And so that's a key learning there as well. In terms of where to get users, there are different programs that are tackling, if there are different programs that are tackling the same problem, you can potentially partner with them to get users, like community-based organizations. You can reach out to different agency partners, some of your colleagues that may have access to folks who are dealing with this issue. And then if you need something quick and dirty, there's also online platforms that you can leverage. There's one called usertesting.com that we've used several times in the past. There are many of these programs. I'm not sponsored by usertesting.com, but we have just used them many times. So, but many of these exist. You want to pilot test your plan and materials. So figure out the approach for how you actually want to conduct the interview. Are you using Zoom? Does the recruitment tool you used, like usertesting.com, does it have a recording feature? Who's taking notes? Who's actually doing the interviewing? This might sound crazy at this point, but we actually did used to interview people in person at one point. So where are you going to interview the user? What makes sense? Are you interviewing them in a library? Are you interviewing them at their work? Are you interviewing them at the point of actually completing the potential service that you're looking to innovate on? Then you want to actually conduct the interviews and workshops. I think it's really important not only to record what folks are saying, but also look at what they're doing, making sure to observe. If you can record the sessions on Zoom, you can start to understand their body language when they respond to different questions. One of the things that I've mentioned in the past is like there's different features now that that may not allow for this, but for example, I've noticed Kate drink out of her water bottle several times. I can make some assumptions that she doesn't like using plastic water bottles. And so she wants to save the planet. And that's why she does reusable water bottles. But there are different insights that you can glean from users by kind of seeing what books are in their background or seeing if they have family photos, things like that, if you do have the opportunity to interview them on Zoom. So make sure to not only jot down the words that they're saying, but also observe during the interview process as well. And that's a really good reason that I like to have more than one person during interviews, so that one person's taking notes and observing while the other person can really engage in the conversation with the user and help them to feel comfortable and help them to not feel like they're just the other person on the other end is taking notes the whole time. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few interview best practices. You've, got your learning goals and objectives down. You've figured out who you want to interview. You started your screener. Now you really want to develop your interview questions. Some best practices for writing interview questions and just conducting interviews overall is to set the tone with warm-up questions. Introduce yourself first and foremost. This is a conversation. People don't like feeling like they're being put on the spot. Let them know your intentions. Ask them how their day's been going, how they're feeling. Just be human. The person on the other side is a human being at the end of the day. And part of that empathy is really recognizing that and acknowledging that they're taking time out of their day to speak with you. Avoid leading questions. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Ask open-ended questions. So it goes right into number 4, avoid yes or no questions. The more open-ended you get, the more you're allowing the user to kind of add their own color and detail. You're giving them an opportunity to tell a story. And that's really kind of where some of the magic happens. I think sometimes we have, again, some assumptions in our head about a particular subject or why things are going a certain way or even who people are. And asking open-ended questions can give you more detail about kind of what you're looking for. It also gives you answers that you may not even know you needed. So number 5 is your script is a guide. It's okay to veer off track. Mindfully bring the conversation back if it goes too far. But, we were asking a question, or we were interviewing some users about being a working parent, and we got some great insight about how some folks are not only taking care of their children, but they're also taking care of their parents. And so understanding kind of additional struggles that they had to go through by just listening and letting folks kind of be open and sharing with us gave us greater insight into who they were and kind of the barriers they had to overcome. New questions will come up as you discuss with folks. Feel free to build room in your guide for those, and then also to follow up on those. Again, you could get some great insight as kind of some follow-up questions to details that folks share with you. And then that dovetails into the last one. You'll learn new information. It's okay to adjust the script between interviews. If a question's not, you've tried it a couple times and a question's not working, feel free to dump it. Feel free to add questions as you get additional insight. The those sessions may not go as you plan, and that's totally okay. I think it's important, and I personally think fun, to lean into the serendipity and spontaneity of where these interviews may go. And in my personal opinion, the best conversations go off script, where I get to learn more about the person that I'm talking to. I have been speaking for at least 25 minutes now, so I'm going to take a quick break before we jump into the breakout session. I also meant to ask, when we were doing the learning goals, if there was anything else that folks were hoping to get out of this session that I haven't touched on yet. We're going to go into the breakout sessions to talk more about interview questions, and then I'll land with tips for success and touch on any additional questions at the end. But I just wanted to pause here to kind of see how folks were feeling. All right. Must be a glorious Thursday. Everybody's so quiet. Well, I'll give you time to talk during your breakout sessions.
Emilia, could I jump in with a few questions that had come up in other sessions?
Sure. And if there's questions in the chat too, Graham or Kate, please feel free to shout them out to me.
Yeah, Graham, Sugar, good to see you. Need more coffee. Just get one or two to kick us off, and please feel free to toss them in the chat. We've heard in past sessions that some people think about interviewing maybe folks who work in call centers who engage with users consistently. Would love to hear how you think about when you should be engaging with the folks who are really experiencing the service, and when you may want to pull in people who are engaging with those users, you know, tons of people a day and a week. Would love your perspective there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. I think it's important to engage with both. I think if you should always try to actually get to the user, and there will never be a substitute for that. On this last project that I was working on, we engaged with both working parents, and we engaged with folks who were calling into the call center and asking about maternity leave benefits. They have a more robust perspective. I think when you engage with the user, you get a certain level of detail and experience that you're not going to get from the call center, because they're not living in that moment. But the call center can help you start to kind of understand different patterns and things that they're hearing more frequently. If they have reporting data to support that, that's even better. But if you can't, you know, for some reason or another, you can't get to the end user, it is okay to interview proxies, like the call center, or somebody who you know, engages via email or chat. But I think it's important to talk to both to get a well-rounded perspective. Another place where we got a lot of insights, and I know some of my agency partners have been in these trenches as well, is to go to social media. There are pages on Facebook and Reddit that give tips and tricks about how to solve certain problems. They go in great detail about pain points that folks are going through. And you can really start to understand and see patterns that way as well. And you can engage with some of the administrators of those groups to kind of get additional perspective on that as well. So if you can't engage with those particular users, that's another kind of proxy that you can engage with.
Great, and we have a couple of points in the chat. From Sylvia, what would be a successful way to interact with teammates who are not working together with you in a team setting? Maybe we can cover that one at the end after the breakouts. And and we'll pause there. And Emilia, how long are we going to go into breakouts for?
Let's do 10 minutes. I'm going to share a document in the chat. If you would like to type in the document, please just go to file and make a copy, and you can type with your group that way. If you just want to jot down in your notebook, that works too. I just ask that you don't actually type on the document, because then everybody can see what you're typing. So let me send this to the chat. Where am I here? And so for the breakout session, you'll see it in the instructions there, but the goal is to strengthen the skills required to generate a strong interview guide. I want you as a group to read through the mock interview questions and then note the necessary improvements for each question based on, oh shoot, okay, hold on. I'm gonna save it as a PDF and I'll send it. Thank you, Mercedes. Sorry, let me send this as a PDF and then I'll continue on.
And while we're doing that, Cheney, I just wanted to call on you. You've got it in, so we'll hear from Cheney in the breakouts.
Can y'all access that PDF?
Came through for me.
Okay. And so I'd love you to go through the mock interview questions, make sure that you note any improvements for each question, and then rewrite the question using some of the tips that we discussed in today's presentation. And then if you have extra time, given the background and the learning goals that are listed, come up with 1 to 3 additional questions that you would ask that support those objectives. And then we can come back and chat about it and ask some more questions.
Thanks, Emilia. I'm ready to send people to breakout rooms as soon as you give me the green light. Just want to check, this like 5 groups of 6 sound about right, or how big were you thinking?
That works, yeah.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Graham. So we'll take 10 minutes and then come back.
Thanks, I will send you away. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Graham, I'm gonna look for one to join.
Thanks for doing that, Graham.
Do you want me to share again, Emilia?
Yes. I think we have 6 minutes or so. What were there any main themes that came out of the breakout session? I know we had some in my group. Is there anything anybody wanted to discuss about kind of how revising those questions went in their group, or maybe how, if they came up with any additional questions, what questions they came up with? Feel free to just unmute because I can't see everyone.
Our group didn't have I wanted to say something on number 5. Turning 18 must feel so exciting. So we thought this was inappropriate and offensive because maybe to an 18-year-old, it's not so exciting. Okay.
My take on that was I was actually 17 when I graduated high school because of my birthday, and my first job was when I was 16. So like if somebody said that to me, I would be quite offended for them aging me. Like, and then what was it? Number 6 as well. I didn't find that appropriate. I did upload my notes that we were typing about it, but when do you plan on moving out of your parents' house? Like, you don't know somebody's previous situation. It could be traumatic. Like, this could be like a very awkward way to get to know your future or potential employee.
Great. Yeah, a lot of that came up for my group as well. It looks like in the chat, a lot of don't make assumptions, which was the biggest thing that I tried to recreate in those questions. And not knowing, it sounds like based on Kristen and some folks in my group, not knowing where people are. One of my teammates used my group mates used the word generous, and saying that some of these questions aren't very generous. You're not really leaving room for folks to share their experiences with you. And I love that. I also, I didn't see it in the chat, but I wanted folks to hit on, there are a few yes or no questions. So I think there was one about, I don't remember what the second question was, but I'm
Do you
sure
like high school? Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's a yes or no question. Yeah.
And you could quickly shut down the conversation if somebody said no. So asking a question about their experiences so that they can open up and tell stories about their experiences, or maybe saying something like, tell me about your favorite moment in high school, or tell me about a moment that you didn't care for so much in high school, gets the user to open up a little bit more than some of those yes or no questions. So I'm glad you guys were all put off by my fake questions. I would never ask those to users. It did start to reinforce some of the themes about not having assumptions, not asking leading questions, not putting your own experiences in the questions and your own feelings, and then also asking open-ended questions so that you can leave space for folks to tell their stories. I just wanted to jump to the tips for success really quick. I know we only have a few minutes, but I think these are really important to share. The first one is recruitment takes time. Don't underestimate it. So it's going to take time for you to put your screener out there, for you to get responses, for you to schedule the interviews, for you to make sure that the times that the users are available line up with the times your colleagues are available. So make sure to build that into your timeline. Ask participants to think out loud during the session. Sometimes folks might be a little quiet or think that they need to think of the best answer. So feel free to ask them to think out loud, and especially if you're doing having them react to something like a website or a piece of media or collateral, you want to know what they're thinking, and so ask them to think out loud. Work in pairs, I've talked about that already. So one of your teammates can be more observant. Use your personal networks for recruitment. I talked about that, about CBOs and maybe some of your colleagues at work that work in the same space. Be flexible about your script. I discussed that a little bit. And then the last one that I really want to share with y'all is to adopt a healing mindset. So I mentioned at the beginning of the call that I was at a conference last year, and another thing that they mentioned was to make sure that you kind of understand that the folks that we work with have often been traumatized by their experiences, and they've sometimes even been traumatized by the systems that we're working on improving. So just remembering that we're outsiders to their community, and that we don't want to be extractive when we conduct this research, and we want to make sure that we're adding value back to the community. So that's something to keep in mind. It's hard to practice. It's a skill set that you develop over time, but really gets back to that empathy piece that I mentioned at the beginning. I know we're at time, we're 1 minute over. I'm open to staying if folks have questions, but that's probably Kate's call.
I think it's more your call, so I'll drop a quick note in the chat for folks who have joined. Thanks for joining. We will send you a follow-up survey tomorrow. We'll share the deck and the recording, and appreciate everyone being here. We host free workshops each week, so please feel free to join us on future sessions with the link in the chat. And if folks do want to stay on, I'm happy to stay on for maybe 15 more minutes if Emilia has it, if folks want to ask questions. And if you have another meeting to go to, totally fine. So we'll leave it at that.